Hello there, and welcome to the Pro Tools 110 ebook Chapter 5. This is a very exciting chapter. It's all about elastic audio, arguably one of the most powerful features of Pro Tools or any DAW. So let's just dive into it. Okay, here we are. Exercise 5 of the Pro Tools 110 book, page 146. Getting started. As you know, you need the Pro Tools exercise media files, specifically the 110 exercise media files. So let's see what they want us to open. Oh, the Ugly Duckling session. This is a fun one. It is in the Pro Tools 110 download media folder, 04 Ugly Duckling. Okay, here we go. Right here, Ugly Duckling. And they want us to open up the Pro Tools template file, the uglyduckling.ptxt file. Okay, let's see what they have us do here. We're going to do a stereo mix. Everything else will stay the same. And then we'll do a save, and we'll save it as 110 exercise 5 with our initials. Great. Okay. So 110 exercise 5. One day I'll be able to type. Okay. Stereo mix, prompt for location. I'm just going to save it in the same folder that it came from, the Ugly Duckling folder. That's just easiest for me. I would suggest you do the same unless you have a specific folder you're setting this stuff in. That would work as well. And now it should open up. And while it's opening, oh, that was quick. All right. All right, this is a pretty easy video session in the sense that there's only, looks like 5 tracks. There's actually 6. There's a hidden track. But we're only going to be dealing with 2 of the tracks today. So let's go back to the book here. Okay, we're going to be doing replacement dialogue. This is where elastic audio comes into play a lot. If you're doing ADR, for example, and someone is re-speaking their lines and you're trying to get the lines to fit into the words into the mouth on the screen, sometimes the words being re-recorded don't fit exactly into the mouth. You'll need to make some syllables longer, some syllables shorter, maybe make an extra long breath between 2 words, maybe shorten the breath between 2 other words. That's what elastic audio is all about. It's lengthening and shortening sounds, whether it's music or usually in our case dialogue, to fit the parameters that we need to fit it in without changing the pitch and still sounding natural. It's crazy how it works, but it's pretty cool. So we are going to activate the new dialogue track. The replacement dialogue track is currently hidden and muted, so it is not audible. So we need to display and unmute the track. So we do that by using our track list. And you'll see next there is a track called Working Dialogue that is hidden. You know that it's hidden because the little dot to the left of it is grayed out. So we want to ungray it out and make it a nice black dot again, which will release it from its hiding. So here we go. Working dialogue right here in the tracks list. Here's the one dot that is not lit up. Boom. There it is. I'll do it one more time. Hiding, not hiding. Hiding, not hiding. There it is right there. So what's happening here is there's dialogue right here, and we want to replace it with this working dialogue. As you can see, we can already get a head start on what's going to be happening just by looking at the waveforms. It looks like there's a line here where somebody says something, and it looks like this person is saying something similar. It's actually the exact same script, so he's saying the exact same lines, but he's saying it a little slower. So we're going to have to use this elastic audio plugin to shrink it down and fit exactly into this spot. And we'll have to do this for each section of dialogue. So let's see how we do this. So we're going to deactivate the mute, press return to go to the start of the session. open up the video, and begin playback. And note that a portion of the new dialogue is out of sync with the original and does not match well with the video. Okay, let's see what they're talking about. Go back to the beginning by hitting return, unmute, open up the video, make it a little smaller since I'm showing you guys on the screen here what's going on. And yeah, let's put that right there.
I checked that already, sir. It's making a sound like rah, rah. No, rah. Yes.
All right, so what you're hearing here is the original dialogue of the guy on the screen, and then the working dialogue, which actually sounds a lot more boring by comparison. But that is what the director wants, I guess. At least that's what this exercise is all about. It's getting rid of this dialogue and replacing it with this dialogue. The trick is, when you listen to them both together, you hear points where they line up perfectly and points where they don't. You want it all to line up perfectly. That's what Elastic Audio is for. So let's get to it. Let's get this out of the way. So first, all right. Enable the timecode ruler. So we want to view our time base as timecode because this is video. The timecode ruler will appear in the timeline display of the edit window. We'll do it within the main counter selector. And for the sub counter, I'll do minutes and seconds. That's pretty much the standard. Main counter is timecode, sub counter is minutes and seconds. Because we normally work off of a sheet that's listed in, edit points in frames. So we like our main time base to be timecode. And our sub time base to be minutes and seconds. And now when you look up here, you see that our time base is at timecode and we see everything in hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. Perfect. Okay, so let's get rid of that for now. And we're going to put this in grid mode and enable link, track, and edit selection if not already checked. It usually is, but we should make sure. So grid mode and then link, track, and edit selection. If it's blue, it's on. So it's on. Okay. Correcting the timing. So for this portion, you will activate Elastic Audio on the working dialogue track and perform range warping to align the start of various words to specific locations in grid mode. So let's pause for a second. What are the three main warpings of Elastic Audio? There's telescope warping, and of course there is accordion warping, and then there is range warping. We're going to be doing range warping, and I am between pages 132 and 134 in the book. If you forget what those types of warping are, definitely go to those pages. What we're going to be doing is range warping, and what that means is we're choosing two warp markers and we're modifying the length of time in between them. So we're selecting a range, sort of like an in point and an out point, if you will, and modifying everything within that range. So let's go back. And it's important to know the difference between range, accordion, and telescope warping. So get that down if you haven't already. So here we go. Click on Zoom Preset 2 to zoom into the spot we're going to be working on, and the target clips is making a sound like rah rah and no rah are next to each other on the track. We'll use the grabber tool to select the first of two clips. Hold the shift key and click on the second clip. The edit selection will now extend across both clips. So Zoom Preset 2 up here. Remember, these are the preset buttons. We did this a couple exercises ago. All right. And you go, so we select the grabber tool. It's making a sound like rah, rah. That's the first one they want us to click on. I keep clicking on the wrong thing. There we go. It's making sound like rah rah and no rah. So we want to select those two. Got it. So making sound like rah rah, shift select no rah. Okay. Click on the track nameplate for working dialog so it becomes selected. With the track selected, the edit selection will now move down to this track. This is why we do this selection. Because the edit selection and timeline selection are linked, when I choose a different track, that selection follows my movements. So if I click on VO, watch what happens. If I click on music, watch what happens. If I click on effects, watch what happens. Because my selection is saved in the timeline. So I want working dialogue. Once again, in case you missed all that, when you link the timeline and edit, or the track and edit selections right here, then what happens is when you make a selection up here, as you can see, it affects your entire timeline, correct? Now, if I make a selection here in the timeline or the edit window, I clicked right here, and then I shift click here, watch what happens up here. I have now selected this part of the timeline. So if I click on another track, it's still linked to the timeline selection. It's a good way to say, I know I want to do something from this point to this point, but on another track. So I'll select it on the track where I know my time is accurate, and then I'll click on an adjacent track that I want to work on, and that selection will follow. It's a really powerful tool. Okay. And I like these discussion points. They didn't really do this in 101 so much, but they're doing it in the 110 book. What is the purpose of holding the shift key in step 3 above? What would happen if you clicked on the second clip without holding shift? It would have deselected the first one and only selected the second one. Why did the edit selection move to the working dialog track when you selected the track in step 4? Because this button was selected. Pretty cool. Okay. So now, activate Elastic Audio and review the selection. Click on the Elastic Audio plugin selector at the head of the working dialog track and select Polyphonic. Now remember, there are different types of Elastic Audio plugins. This right here, which looks, it's been called the plunger, that is the symbol for Elastic Audio. If you click on it, watch what happens. You get a little pop-up menu with a bunch of wacky terms that maybe you have never seen before. Polyphonic, well, rhythmic, I'm sure we've all seen. Monophonic, Varispeed, and X-form. This exercise is only going to be dealing with polyphonic. I'm going to throw in some X-form at the very end as well. But if you want to know what all of these mean and what they're best used for, definitely go back into the lesson 5. Talks about it in great detail. I'll tell you this though, if you want a cool like tape fast forwarding, rewinding like effect, Varispeed is super cool. But because we don't want any pitch changes, we were basically looking to slow down the audio but still have it sound normal. We are going to choose polyphonic. Actually, all of these will do that, but polyphonic is one of the smoothest and easiest to use ones. So we choose this. So here we go, polyphonic, right there. And let's see what we got. Click on the track view selector and switch from waveform view to warp view. But before we do that, note what happens. When we turn Elastic Audio on, which is what happens when we choose one of those Elastic Audio plugins, it makes the track Elastic Audio enabled. When that happens, the clips on that track are analyzed to see what is capable of being elastic. Let's look. Waveform, warp. See all these markers right here? These are basically event markers. That is, I don't want to say generically, but they're called that, but then we can turn them into other markers. But fundamentally, they are what we call event markers. This is where events happen. This is how Elastic Audio works. It analyzes the clips in your track. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And as you can see, it finds moments of transience, or moments where the audio goes from quiet to loud, or any sort of change in volume. It's those transient points that can be stretched out or compressed in time. And again, in the lesson, you can modify the sensitivity of these transients. Like if you want any subtle volume change to be a transient point, or only loud, sudden loud volume changes to be transient points, you can make your transient points more or less sensitive in the Elastic Audio preferences, which you can access from setup into preferences. Again, that is in the lesson 5 chapter if you want to figure out how to do that. I will tell you this though, it's set to a nice sensitivity just right out of the box. So until you work with Elastic Audio, like, very intensely or a lot, you really aren't going to have to dive into the preferences to play the sensitivity too much. Just leave it where it is. But if you ever do want to play with Elastic Audio sensitivity, it's in the preferences. So we are looking at our event markers, and it is between these markers that we can make changes. We can make this part, we could stretch it out, or we can compress it. We could stretch out between this point and this point. We can stretch out this whole thing. These are event markers. So just to show you really quick, this is what a telescoping warp is. If you've ever seen those old cartoons of pirates with the telescope, they have this little thing that looks like this, and they hold it up to their eye, and they go whoop. It's like a tube that extends out and compresses back. That's what a telescoping warp is. It's where you go to the first or the last event marker, click, hold, and drag. And what it does is it telescopes in or telescopes out your audio clip. And you'll notice when it turns red, that means it won't be able to apply Elastic Audio. Elastic Audio does have limits. In fact, right now, even though it's not red, I could tell you it's already beyond the limit. It should be. But when it goes red, that means this definitely will not work. So you will see that occasionally when you're working with Elastic Audio. If it goes red, that means you need to back off. It's elastic, but it's not elastic into infinity. It's elastic up to a point. So that was a telescoping warp. A range warp is where we're going to choose like a point here and a point here and affect the length of time between transient points within that range. So with the grabber tool, click on the event marker at the start of the second occurrence of the word raw on the working dialog track. It will convert to a warp marker. Okay, so let's listen. Let's go back out a little bit. There we go.
It's making a sound like
Okay, so he says raw right there. Okay, so it says to click on the vertical gray line at the start of the second occurrence of the word raw, and that will convert your event marker to a warp marker. So when I zoom in, just to get a closer look, this is where he says raw a second time. When you put your hand, or in this case, your hand is where you want to work with, or your grabber, over an event marker, you'll see it change into a different type of icon. This icon lets you know that when you click on, if I click right now on the event marker, or you double click rather, it becomes a solid white line with a little triangle at the bottom. Looks kind of like this little plunger icon I pointed out earlier. That lets me know this is now a warp marker. A warp marker is basically setting a wall between one section and another section. So let's look to see what happens. Right now I have one warp marker. Before, when I clicked on this event marker, the whole clip telescoped. Watch what happens now. As you can see, it's only, now this is what we call an accordion warp. It's scrunching like an accordion between the beginning of the clip and the new warp marker I just formed. If I go over to this side, see that? Same thing. Nothing happens before that warp marker. It only happens after. So as you might guess, if I make another warp marker, say like right here, then I'll be able to adjust the elastic audio between those two warp markers. Let's see what they want me to do. The grabber tool, click on the event marker at the start of the occurrence. The event marker will convert to a warp marker. Option click on the track nameplate for a working dialog track to deselect it and remove the edit selection from the track. Okay, so I guess they don't want this edit selection to be highlighted anymore. That's fine. We'll do what they say. There we go. I guess they don't want any constraints when we do this. Drag the warp marker for the word raw to the left so that it aligns with the corresponding part of the waveform on the dialog track around the 622 mark. And we can look at our transport window around here to see that we're actually doing that. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit. So with this, I will drag, we'll look here at the cursor right here. We want to drag this warp marker to the 622 mark. And as you can see, it dragged the whole thing. And this is now right under this word. So waveform wise, I could see that the working dialogue is directly in line with the dialogue that's in the commercial. We did move this one back a little bit, so we're probably going to have to do some fine tuning, which we will do. Click on the event marker at the start of the word no on the working dialogue track and drag it to the right slightly so it aligns with the corresponding part of the waveform on the dialogue track around 805. Okay, so no, drag it to about 805. You got it. Let's see here. Let's listen a little bit.
No.
Right here, no. So he says no here, but it's supposed to be right there. So drag it to about 805. All right, that's what it says there. Great. Click on the event marker at the start of the final raw and drag it to the left so it aligns with the corresponding part of the waveform around 828. Okay, so I think this is what they're talking about. Okay, so drag this back to about 828, just a little bit. Great. Now, this part they don't tell us to do, but as you can see, as you can see, when you zoom in right here, this got pushed over to the left when we did our first warp move. So what I'm going to do is I am going to bring this back a little bit. See this right here? And since I create another warp marker here, look at this. See this bit in the middle here? I can now drag this. See how it's not affecting anything before that first warp marker, and after that next warp marker, I'm only affecting what's in between here. There we go. And you can always get rid of warp markers or add them by right-clicking on them. Remove warp marker. Remove warp marker. Or add warp marker. Add warp marker. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So it's now saying that we should press the spacebar to audition the changes. So let us go back to the beginning, zoom out, and play from the beginning to about, well, just the part that we worked on, pretty much this part right here. You know what, let's zoom in a little bit. There we go. And look how our waveforms are lined up. Now let's watch. We're hearing both the dialogue and the working dialogue, which were out of sync, but visually we could see that they are now in sync.
I checked that already, so it's making a sound like rah, rah. No, rah. Yes.
All right, much better than before. As you can see with Elastic Audio, it involves a lot of fine-tuning, a little bit here, a little bit there. But when you have something that's just a little bit off and needs to get pushed back or pushed forward, but without affecting the pitch of the audio, it is exactly what you need. So let's see what it says to do now. Disable and hide the unused dialogue track. Choose track, make inactive to disable the selected track. It will now get grayed out on the screen. And then hide it. And then listen to it with just the working dialogue. Okay, so dialogue, make inactive. See, it goes, it's grayed out. And if you go up to the where it says dialogue, you can see it's now italicized in the track list, letting us know it's inactive. We'll click on the little visible or hidden dot and make it invisible. Boop. And now we could put warp mode back into just plain old waveform mode. And let's go ahead and give it a whirl.
I checked that already, see. It's making a sound like rah, rah. No, rah. Yes.
I mean, the other audio is actually better, but this is an exercise to like sync up, you know, new audio to old video. And, you know, in that sense, it works. So once you do that, I would say put this back, working dialogue, put it back into warp mode so I could see the work that you did. Take a picture of the screen, send it to me. Exercise 5 is done.